I'm Love, and we are going to learn about action words, or I should say verbs. So in this video, we will learn about what a verb is, its types, categories, and form.
And if you're new to our channel, please do like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell for new updates.
What is the meaning of verb? According to Grammarly.com, verbs are words that describe action, whether it is physical or mental. Verbs also describe a state of being, like the verbs be, become, or exist. For example, Glenn dribbles the ball, shoots it, and scores the game. Winner! In this example, our verbs dribbles, shoots, and scores. So every sentence requires the use of at least one verb. If there is no verb, the sentence is incomplete or fragmented. A sentence, with the exception of imperative sentences or commands, requires a subject or the thing doing the action. Okay, now let's talk about the types of verbs. So we have dynamic verbs, stative verbs, auxiliary verbs, modal auxiliary verbs, and last, we have phrasal verbs. So pag sinabi nating dynamic verbs, these are verbs that describe physical actions na nakikita o naririnig. The examples are walk, swim, play, eat, drink, sing, and dance. Mental or internal actions are still dynamic verbs, but they aren't always as obvious. These are called process verbs. Here are some examples. We have endure, succeed, fail, change, and grow. Let's talk about the stative verbs. Stative verbs are the exact opposite of dynamic verbs of action. Stative verbs describe subjects' mental or emotional state, including what they like and dislike. Examples of stative verbs: want, need, like, dislike, and understand. So now let's talk about the auxiliary verbs, or also known as helping verbs. Are used in English to change the tense, voice, or mood of another verb. There is always a main verb that represents the main action when auxiliary verbs are used. The auxiliary verb, however, must still be conjugated correctly. The most common auxiliary verbs are be, have, and do. Example of auxiliary verbs: I have eaten adobo many times before. It is example of tense. The adobo was eaten by me. It is voice. Did you eat the adobo? It is mood. Some auxiliary verbs are added to another verb to show necessity, capability, or possibilities. Modal auxiliary verbs, like other auxiliary verbs, do not replace the main verb, but they do alter its meaning slightly. Can, may, could, should, would, must, ought, and might are some common examples. For example, I should subscribe to English Tutor Hub because their videos are helpful. Wearing a face mask is a must. So now let's talk about the phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are phrases that functions as individual verbs, frequently combining two or more words to change their meaning. When the verb get is combined with various prepositions, it can form a variety of phrasal verbs. Here is an example. When the bell rang, students go out of the classroom. The key thing to remember about phrasal verb is that they function as a single verb, so you can combine them with another verbs and prepositions. When conjugating a phrasal verb, you only conjugate the part of phrase that is actually a verb, such as get. Aside from the types of verbs, we also have categories of verbs. So we have transitive, intransitive, and detransitive, speaking or copular verbs. And last, we have regular versus irregular verbs. The transitive, intransitive, and detransitive are forms of a verb. Refer to how it interacts with direct and indirect objects. A direct object is the person or thing to whom the action is directed, whereas an indirect object is the person or thing to whom the direct object is directed. Let us take a look at the example. Elijah threw the towel to Charlotte. In the example, Elijah is the subject and Charlotte is the direct object. Anything or anyone who does the action is the subject, and the direct object is the one receiving the object. Now let's talk about intransitive verbs. So when we say intransitive verbs are those do not use either direct or indirect object. These verbs are full-fledged actions in and of themselves like run, talk, swim, sleep, and work. On the other hand, transitive verbs are those that use a direct object rather than indirect object. They don't always require a direct object, but it is an option. Example: clean, like, love, dislike, hate, want, learn, and say. The transitive verbs are those that use both direct and indirect objects. They don't always require an indirect object, but it's an option. For example, throw, make, buy, sell, read, give, lend, and bring. Simple past. The past tense describes an action that has already occurred. In most cases, it is formed by appending ed to the end of the root form or by simply appending d if the root form already ends in an e. However, irregular verbs should be avoided because the rules for the past are inconsistent. The present participle is used in the continuous tenses to show ongoing or current action. And it can also be used in participial phrases in more advanced English. In most cases, you simply add ing to the end of the root form, though in some cases, you must first remove an e. Past participle. For perfect tenses, the past participle is used. In regular verbs, it's the same as the simple past tense. So, there's nothing new to learn. However, because irregular verbs frequently use unusual past participles, you may need to memorize their forms. Just as a verb can be dynamic or stative, depending on its meaning. It can also act transitively at times and intransitively at others. These are referred as ambitransitive. For instance, if you ask someone if they are hungry, they may respond, "No, I've already eaten." It is example of intransitive. The other one, no, I've already eaten up a sandwich. It is example of transitive verb. The active voice is the standard format in English where the subject performs the action. However, you can use the passive voice to make the direct or indirect objects of the sentence the subject of the sentence. You can make a verb passive by adding a conjugated form of be in front of its past participle. Elijah threw the towel to Charlotte. Active. The towel was thrown to Charlotte by Elijah. It is passive. In formal linguistics, a linking verb, or also known as copula or copula verb, connects the subject not only to other nouns and adjectives, also to prepositional phrases and other verbs in the infinitive form. Although the verb be is the most commonly used linking verb in English, other linking verbs such as appear and become are also used. For example, Marites is in the living room. Gladys seems to love summer holidays. Now let's talk about the last categories of verb, which is the regular versus irregular verbs. Verbs have different forms to indicate different uses. An action that occurred in the past or an action that occurs on a continuous basis. Normally, these forms follow the same conjugation patterns, allowing you to apply the same rules to all verbs. Regular verbs are those that use the normal forms. To fully understand the regular and irregular verbs, let us take a look into the forms of verbs. The root form is the verb's most basic form, with no changes. It is also the simple present tense for all but the third person singular. When used with subjects such as he, she, the singular they, or it, the third person singular in the present tense usually adds as to the end of the root form. You remove the y and add ies to verbs that end in a consonant and ay if the verb ends in a vowel and ay. For example, buy. Simply add as usual, says or buys. Verbs ending in ch, sh, x, z, or s add es to the end rather than just s. Watch, for example, become watches, and kiss become kisses. Lastly, we have infinitives and gerunds. On infinitive places, the prepositions to in front of the root form of a verb. Although technically two words, an infinitive functions as a single word, usually a noun, but sometimes an adjective or adverb as well. For example, to eat, to climb, to walk. Alternatively, you can make the verb a gerund by adding ing, which is the same as making it a present participle. A gerund is strictly used as a noun, but they can also be used to form gerund phrases, which act as a single unit to modify the gerund. For example, cycling is fun. So that's the end of our video. I hope that you have learned a lot about verb, and as always, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please also check our translation videos. Maraming salamat po. God bless.